Hello and welcome to the Everyday Project Manager. I'm Jeremy Nichols, and today I'm going to be talking about project acronyms, those little 3 or 4 letter abbreviations that every industry or company or organization uses to refer to something very quickly. And that's very helpful if everybody in the room understands what those words mean, but if you're a newcomer to the business or to the industry or to a profession, then some of these terms can be a little bit confusing and a little bit alienating. So my task today is to share with you 10 of the most common project acronyms that I've come across. Now, there are hundreds, obviously, and I can't promise to cover all of them, but if there are some I don't cover and you'd like to know about, let me know in the comments and I will either answer you there or maybe we'll do another video in the future and cover the next 10 project acronyms. But for today, we're going to cover my top 10 and they start with number 1, which is TCQ. TCQ stands for time, cost and quality, sometimes referred to as the golden triangle of project management, because these are the 3 elements of a project that must be balanced at all times. So, for example, if you want to save time on a project, you might have to throw more money at it. It's going to cost more, or reduce the quality of the product you're trying to do in order to get it in the time frame you're trying to meet. Similarly, if you want to save money, you might accept that you have to reduce the quality or that the project's going to take a little bit longer to deliver. Time, cost and quality on a project all relate to one another, and that's why you might quite often hear them referred to by their initials TCQ. Next up, number 2 is the RACI, R-A-C-I, and RACI stands for Responsible, Accountable, Consulted and Informed. And these refer to the 4 modes that any one person might relate to a task. So for any given task or activity on a project, someone is going to be accountable for it. They'll have overall ownership of it and they'll probably take the responsibility for it should it fail. One person is usually accountable, but they might not actually be doing the work to deliver it. You might have several people that are actually responsible, the R, for delivering the item, the element, the task. So you'll have responsible people as well. And then you might want to consult someone. So they're not actually responsible for delivering it. They don't have overall accountability for it, but they should be consulted. Do you think we should do it this way? Perhaps a legal professional on a particular type of project. Is this the right way to do this? And finally, informed. Someone who doesn't fall into any of the former categories, but should be kept up to date as to what's happening. So on any given activity, it's useful to think about who's accountable, who's responsible, who gets consulted, and who should be informed. And those give you the 4 elements, R-A-C-I, the RACI. Number 3 is the SOW. Now this S in this could stand for either statement or scope, but it's statement of work or scope of works. And it refers to a list of the activities that will be carried out on a project. And this is often quite useful to draw up if you're involving a third party, for example, to deliver an element of your project, but it can be used just internally to explain to someone what it is you need them to do for their element of the project. You draw up the scope of work that you want them to do, an SOW. Number 4 is UAT. This stands for User Acceptance Testing, and this is very common on IT projects predominantly. There's a version of it used in operational projects called ORAT, or Operational Readiness and Testing. But basically it's when you get people who are going to be using the product, the end product that your project is delivering, to just give it a final test to ensure it's fit for purpose before your ultimate go live. So user acceptance testing is when you go back to the people who are actually going to be using the product and you ask them to test and check that it meets the requirements that they set out in the first place when they specified that we want the product to do these things. So that's UAT. Number 5 is AFC. AFC stands for Anticipated Final Cost. So when you're forecasting your costs on a project, you will have a cost that your budget that you set at the outset. This is what we think it's going to cost overall. But as the project goes on, you will constantly update your AFC, which is your Anticipated Final Cost. In other words, what you think the total cost of the project will be at the point you have delivered it. When it has finished, what do you think the total cost will be? And that might be different from what you thought it was going to be when you started. So if I'm halfway through the project, I might have said this project will cost £10,000, but now I'm halfway through the project and I'm starting to forecast that actually by the time we're done, this is going to be more like 12,000 or maybe 8,000 if I'm coming in under budget. Your AFC defines what you think at any point in the project your final cost is going to be. Number 6 stands for RAID. So RAID logs are used, documents that are used on projects and combine several different logs or registers. But RAID stands for risks, assumptions, issues, and dependencies. Actually, the A and the D do change. So it's not always assumptions, sometimes it's actions, and it's not always dependencies, sometimes it's decisions, depending on the organization or the particular project setup you're in. But you want to record your risks. What are the things that might go wrong and what are we doing about those things? Your assumptions or your actions. So what have we assumed is going to happen here? What are the assumptions we've made around this project that we might need to revise every so often and check are still correct? Or the actions, who's doing what and when have they agreed to do it by, tracking those actions in that log. Issues, any issues that have come up and what needs to be done to resolve those issues, or keeping a historical log of the issues that have been dealt with so you can refer back should the need arise. And finally, dependencies or decisions. What are the things that your project is dependent on in order to deliver? Maybe it's another project needs to do their thing before your project can complete. Maybe it's just another activity that's happening in the business or the organization you're working in. So what are your dependencies? Or what are the decisions that have been made along the way? Keep a register of those so that you know, actually no, we agreed back then that this is the approach we would take. And sometimes it is useful to refer back to previous decisions that have been made. So your RAID log contains all of these things, the risks, the actions, the issues, the dependencies, or the assumptions and decisions as well. So that's RAID. Number 7 is RFP. And RFP stands for Request for Proposal. And this is used in procurement on project management where you're looking to get hold of third-party help or resources or products. And you put out an RFP which explains the services or the requirements that you as an organization have, and you request these third-party organizations to put together a proposal that will meet those requirements. So this is part of the tendering process on projects. So you ask maybe 3, maybe 5, however many third parties you want to engage to put together a proposal according to the requirements that you provide them with. That is an RFP. Number 8 is T&M, and that stands for time and materials. So when people are working in a project, quite often they will work for a fixed price, which means they quote a price, and no matter how long it takes them to deliver or how many materials they use, that's the price that you're going to pay. But sometimes people work on a time and materials basis, which means you haven't got a set price, but you agree to pay them for their time, so however many days it takes, and their materials. So if they have to buy the wood to build the thing that you're building, the wooden construction, then you pay them for the materials as well. So T&M is time and materials. Number 9 is TCO. This stands for Total Cost of Ownership. So when an organisation is deciding whether to invest in a project, whether to spend the money, they don't always just look at what the project is going to cost. What is it going to cost to deliver the project? But what's the total cost of ownership? What is this going to cost our business over time? So they might look to typically 5 years, maybe 10 years, but over the life of the product that you're delivering, how much is that going to cost us? Do we need to bring people in to support this product? And we're going to have to pay that fee every year on an ongoing basis. Perhaps there's software licenses if it's an IT project that are now going to have to be paid on an ongoing basis. So what's the total cost of ownership? And that sometimes gives a sort of fairer impression of what the investment that is required will be, and allows you to make more sort of like for like comparisons when you're weighing up the cost of doing something. And finally, number 10 is FTE, and this stands for full-time equivalent. So this is a resourcing term when you've got lots of people working on your project, or you have a requirement for someone to work on your project, and you try and work out how many full-time people are required. So you might have people working in various bits and pieces. So someone does 3 days a week here, someone is working on your project 2 days a week for this bit, somebody's working on your project 4 days a week for this bit. But what you're trying to work out is how many, if everyone on your project was working full-time, how many people would you need? How many people 5 days a week are your resources using up? So for example, one person working 3 days a week and another person working 2 days a week is one FTE, one full-time person. So that's what FTE stands for. And that is my top 10 acronyms. I hope you found that useful. If you did, please like, it helps other people to find the content. If you want to hear about our videos as and when they come out, please also consider subscribing. But in the meantime, I really hope you found that useful. Thanks ever so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye now.